Background: Alexander II ascended the Russian throne in 1855 during the Crimean War, 1853 to 1856, which exposed the inefficiencies and backwardness of Russia's military, economy, and society. Faced with military defeat and internal unrest, Alexander understood that significant reforms were necessary for Russia to survive and thrive in the modern world. 1. The emancipation of the serfs, 1861. The most significant reform of Alexander II's reign was the emancipation of the serfs in 1861. Prior to this, about 40 million peasants were tied to the land and subject to the control of landowners, working under harsh conditions. Alexander recognized that serfdom hindered Russia's economic development and that it was morally outdated. The Emancipation Manifesto was issued on March 3, 1861, freeing serfs from their legal obligations to landowners. The serfs gained personal freedom and the right to marry without the permission of their masters. However, the reform was not entirely beneficial for the peasants. They were still required to pay for the land they received from the government, and many ended up in a form of debt peonage, leading to dissatisfaction. Results of the reform: the emancipation did not immediately solve the problems of Russian agriculture. Land redistribution was often unfair, with the peasants receiving smaller plots of land than they had worked as serfs. It also led to a surge in rural unrest and uprisings. The reform did, however, help to modernize Russia's economy by fostering a more mobile labor force and allowing peasants to pursue opportunities in urban areas, contributing to industrialization in later years. 2. Judicial reform, 1864. In 1864, Alexander II introduced major changes to Russia's legal system, which was inefficient and corrupt. The judicial reform created a more modern, impartial legal system. It included the establishment of independent courts, the creation of trial by jury, and the publication of court proceedings to ensure transparency. This reform marked a shift toward more Western-style judicial practices, promoting justice and fairness in legal proceedings. It also gave rise to an emerging legal profession, and many lawyers and jurists became increasingly involved in political matters. 3. Military reform, 1874. Alexander II's military reforms were aimed at modernizing the Russian army, which had been exposed as outdated and inefficient during the Crimean War. The military reform of 1874 introduced universal conscription, replacing the previous system of service by contract. This meant that all men of a certain age were required to serve in the army for a set number of years. The military was also modernized with better training, new equipment, and improved military tactics. While these reforms improved the overall efficiency of the military, they also caused discontent among the peasantry, as conscription took away large numbers of men from rural communities. 4. Local government reform, 1864 to 1870. Alexander also sought to improve local governance by creating a system of Zemstvos local councils in 1864 and expanding the Duma municipal councils in 1870. Zemstvos were elected bodies responsible for local administration, including public health, education, infrastructure, and agriculture. They allowed for some degree of local self-government, which was a step toward decentralizing authority. Although they were meant to provide more representation and improve conditions, they were largely controlled by the aristocracy and did not have real power to challenge the autocracy.